there's a story that just came out of London the other day on Reuters that said British cops now say that China, Russia, and Iran are running life-threatening operations more and more on our Western soil. So these are red flags, that I'm seeing increasingly in Canada. But the problem is, as I say, Canada's government, and when I say that, I mean the Liberal government that's been in power for over 10 years now, is dragging its heels in a strange way in terms of not wanting to, change laws to crack down on these foreign organized crime and hostile states.
The southern border doesn't just separate the United States and Mexico. It also splits political alliances, ideologies, and sometimes even families. And decisions about immigration, addressing cartel violence, and the border often dictates who will hold the most powerful positions in the world. But what if there was a resource that could cut through the background noise and give perspective from the front lines of the border crisis? I am Vince Vargas, former Army Ranger and Borstar operator, and the host of IRONCLAD's original podcast, Borderland. I am also the author of a groundbreaking book called Borderland that reveals the untold story of America's first line of defense and special operations of the United States Border Patrol. In the book, I give an inside look at the U.S.-Mexico border through events and life-changing experiences that I took part in during my years of service. I break down the distinct difference between border security and immigration policy through real-world scenarios and insights only available from the front lines. My goal is to counter misconceptions and misinformation about the highly volatile stretch of North America that connects the U.S. and Mexico. So head over to wherever you buy books and pick up a copy today. For you reporting this, obviously you're one of very few that are talking about it in Canada. Like I said, we haven't had a lot of people reach out to us. Kat was the first one that we were like, well, let's see what she knows about Canada. I think there's two other Canadian journalists that we've interviewed. I think one, and then you're the second. Has it put you in any kind of fear of retaliation? You talked about earlier that you've had some credible threats. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. First of all, I mean, you're right. Kat, myself, and a few others are the ones pushing the real knowledge and the real fact finding here. And yet, on the other hand, as I think a lot of more critics are noticing, Canada's, quote, mainstream media is basically saying the opposite. So it's not an easy path for reporters to break the facts when their government and most of the media is saying the opposite. So, like, a lot of credit to Catherine, that's doing some very brave work digging in, with her sources within the cartels, and for me, it's getting my sources. As I said, I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, so I'm comfortable getting information from cops, lawyers, intelligence agents, that kind of thing. I can navigate that world well. And by doing it so well, yeah, I'll tell you that, I was asked to testify in Canada's Parliament in exactly 2 years ago, July 2023. I was asked to testify about the stories that I broke about how China was interfering in our federal elections and China was threatening our Canadian politicians. And I testified. It's like answering a summons. I couldn't avoid it. I went in and told my story. 2 days later, our federal national security police unit knocked on my door of my home, and they, where this is going. They turned on the tape recorder and said, "We have a duty to warn you that we've received a credible threat due to, your reporting on China." So that was, of course, I was just, very gutted, terrible. I just could not believe that in a first world, supposedly formerly great nation like Canada, a credible reporter is getting this kind of thing. And the officer even told me, we would usually only be reaching out to gangsters with this kind of legal duty to warn, right? So for me, that just crystallizes exactly what's going on here. As I told you, we have Canadian politicians, another one just the other day, a big city mayor that got a death threat This is happening on Canadian soil exactly because these international organized crime and hostile state networks are too strong in Canada. So what does it mean? We need, I'll just say, we basically need an uprising of information and outrage among Canadians saying, no, I'm not putting up with that anymore, right? Because good, honest people doing their job should not be receiving the same sort of warnings as gangsters. And to go further than that, it's not that Canadian police have offered me any protection. I do training with a former Canadian special operations guy, right? So yeah, it's a difficult place to be in Canada. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate when you're just doing your job and you start getting threats. It happens often in this space, especially if you're talking too much, right?
That's it. Yeah. So I talk.
Sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I got to keep talking, but talk in a smart way and have smart people with the right resources around me.
Yeah, I agree. Why is it that the media doesn't report it? Like, why is it that there's only a handful of you who are telling the truth of this? And then the media, is it similar to what we have in America, right? In America, we tend to have two different networks that have two different narratives, and they're both kind of fighting a different fight. One's left, one's right. Is it very similar to what you have in Canada?
I think there's a big similarity there. I mean, first of all, in Canada, you know, the factoid came out that there was only something like 43 kilos of fentanyl seized at the northern border. And then Canada's version of the New York Times, it's called the Globe and Mail, ran with that and said, you know, basically President Trump is lying. Canada isn't a fentanyl problem. Canada isn't a cartel problem. And so I had to keep coming out going, that's like the northern border seizure statistics don't capture like hundreds of other law enforcement agencies all across the United States that are seizing, you know, stuff that came from Canada that comes in different routes, you know, not necessarily just carted across the border. And there's recent stories that show, you know, as an example, not to get off track here, I wrote a story the other day about how this major Brothers Keeper Indo-Canadian gangster in Vancouver was caught on a wiretap with his Chinese supplier telling a DEA undercover agent that the Chinese supplier could send 100 kilograms of fentanyl precursors per month to Los Angeles using an Indo-Canadian trucking company that's owned by the Chinese, right? So it gets very deep, and, you know, you just have to wait for those kinds of stories to come up to push away, I would say, pretty much the misinformation being reported by the mainstream media. So yeah, it is similar to what you see where people are like, well, why are they deporting this MS-13 guy that's staying at some judge's house? Meanwhile, like, are you stupid? The MS-13 is responsible for child trafficking into the United States, right?
Oh, yes. It's an interesting conversation. One that I tell people it's like talking to the back of the class. They're never going to listen, you know? So.
Yeah, no, people need to get over their sort of political tribe thinking, if you want to put it that way. My thing has always been just focus on the facts that matter, and let's try to get people to understand what's really going on. In other words, the cartels are moving to Canada. Chinese Communist Party has been here for 40 years. If Canada doesn't do something about it, we lose our sovereignty.